Hello everyone, this is the Chinese Mitten Crabs Aquaponics project. Today we're going to talk about biodiversity. Each year, there are over 10,000 new species being named. Do you know how many kinds of organisms there are on Earth today? No one knows the exact answer. But so far, about 1.75 million kinds of organisms have been identified. Some biologists estimate that the actual number ranges from 5 million to 10 million. This wide variety of life forms is called biodiversity. Organisms are found almost everywhere on Earth. The place where an organism lives is called its habitat. For example, ocean, deserts, forests, polar regions, etc. Each habitat has its own specific environment. In order to survive, organisms show different ways of adapting to the specific environments of its habitats. Here are some examples. Shark's habitat is ocean. It's adapted to the ocean because it has a streamlined body to reduce water resistance during swimming. Cactus' habitat is desert. It's adapted to the desert as its leaves are modified to form spines to reduce water loss. Frog's habitat is freshwater stream. It has webbed feet to aid swimming. Seal's habitat is the polar region. It has a thick layer of fat under its skin to reduce heat loss. Barnacle's habitat is the rocky shore. It has a shell which attaches firmly to rocks to avoid being washed away by waves. The gibbon's habitat is the tropical rainforest. It has long limbs to allow it to swing from tree to tree. Although Hong Kong is a small place, it has a rich biodiversity. For example, we have over 240 kinds of butterflies, about 2/3 of the numbers found in Taiwan. And we have over 80 kinds of coral, a similar amount to the whole of the Caribbean Sea. So let's talk about classification. Why do we need to classify organisms? To help study the wide variety of organisms, biologists have sorted organisms into groups based on their degrees of similarity. This is like sorting books into categories in a library based on how similar the topics are. The sorting of things into groups is called classification. The science of classifying organisms into groups is called taxonomy. Classifying organisms into groups can help us 1. Study a large number of organisms in a systematic way. 2. Identify an organism more easily by matching it with the characteristics of one of the groups. 3. Understand the evolution history of the organisms. And 4. Make predictions. But the question is, how are organisms classified? The classification system used today originates from a system introduced by Carolus Linnaeus in the 18th century. Linnaeus grouped organisms with similar characteristics into categories arranged in different levels. In the system, organisms are first divided into kingdoms according to the most fundamental features. Each kingdom is then divided into different phyla. Organisms in the same phylum share more common features than that of the kingdom level. Each phylum is further divided into different classes using the same principle. Organisms are progressively sorted into smaller groups with increasing similarities and finally into different species. For example, humans are in the kingdom Mammalia, the phylum Chordata, class Mammalia, order Primates, family Hominid, genus Homo, and species Homo sapiens. Besides the above 7 levels, biologists introduced levels between them. For example, Vertebrata is a subphylum, a level between phylum and class, to which all vertebrates belong. Species is the basic unit of classification. Organisms of the same species share the greatest number of similar features. They can interbreed to produce fertile offspring. All dogs belong to the same species, as they can interbreed to produce fertile offsprings. Horses and donkeys can interbreed and produce offsprings called mules. However, mules are infertile. Horses and donkeys are therefore considered as different species. So now, let's talk about how are organisms named. When you go to a park, you may see the scientific names of some organisms. What are the scientific names? Why is it necessary to use scientific names, which looks so complicated? Linnaeus also developed a system of naming organisms. In the system, each organism has a scientific name that consists of two words in Latin. The first word is the genus name. The second word is the species name. This way of naming organisms is called binomial nomenclature. The following are some rules to follow when writing scientific names. First, genus name begins with a capital letter. 2. Species name begins with a small letter. 3. Both names are printed in italics or underlined when handwritten. 4. Once a genus name has been given in full, it can be abbreviated in later usage. For example, H. sapiens instead of Homo sapiens. Each species of organism has only one scientific name which is universal, meaning used by scientists all over the world. This enables scientists to communicate accurately because different common names may be used for the same species in different places. For example, some people call the koala a bear, although it is not a member of the bear family. Sometimes, the scientific name suggests something about the organism, such as who discovered the organism and where the organisms were discovered. For example, Lucialis romeri was discovered by J.D. Romer, and Parasotropon Hong Kong generis was first discovered in Hong Kong. The development of classification system. At the time of Linnaeus, organisms were considered as either plants or animals. In other words, there are two kingdoms only. With the development of better microscopes, biologists discovered that some microorganisms have both plant and animal characteristics. For example, Eugenia contains chlorophyll, like plants, but can swim freely, like animals. To classify this type of organism, a new kingdom, Protista, was proposed in the 1860s. The two-kingdom system was replaced by a three-kingdom system. In the 1950s, the invention of electron microscopes allowed scientists to observe the detailed structures of bacteria. They found that bacterial cells differ from the cells of other organisms in that they have no true nucleus. Thus, it was proposed to put bacteria in a new kingdom, Prokaryota. A four-kingdom system was established. About 10 years later, biologists suggested separating fungi from the plant kingdom as they differ from the plants in many aspects. For example, fungi do not carry out photosynthesis, but plants do. A five-kingdom system, including the new kingdom, fungi, was proposed. In the late 1970s, Carl Woese and his team found that bacteria living in extreme environments, for example, hot springs, were distinct from other bacteria. They put these bacteria into a new kingdom called Archaebacteria. Other bacteria were then put into another kingdom called Eubacteria. These two kingdoms consist of prokaryotes, while the other four kingdoms consist of eukaryotes. A six-kingdom system was therefore established. In recent decades, biologists have tried to classify organisms based on evolutionary history rather than structural similarities. The theory of evolution suggests that all organisms come from a common ancestor, and that over a long period of time, the ancestor developed into different species that exist today by the accumulation of genetic variations. Evolutionary relationships, also called phylogenetic relationships, among organisms are difficult to establish, but they can be deduced from the studies of the genetic material of organisms. It is assumed that more similar the genetic material between the two groups, the closer their phylogenetic relationship. In 1990, Woese found that genetic material of organisms in Eubacteria, Archaebacteria, and organisms, eukaryotes, in other four kingdoms fell into three distinct groups. So he united the six kingdoms into three domains, a level higher than the kingdom. These three domains are bacteria, archaea, and eukarya. Therefore, we can see that the classification system keeps changing over time. A new system is established when new evidence arises of different classification criteria are used by different scientists. Phylogenetic relationships reflect by the classification system. The 3-domain and 6-kingdom system suggested by Rose reflects that the common ancestor gave rise first to bacteria. Archaea arose next. Next came the kingdoms of eukarya. In this modern classification system, organisms that are believed to have a closer phylogenetic relationship are put closer together. For example, the phylogenetic relationship between organisms belonging to the same genus should be closer than those between organisms belonging to different genera within the same family. That is, organisms classified under the same genus should have a more recent common ancestor than organisms classified under the same family. Similarly, the common ancestors of higher taxonomic groups should be found in a more distant past. Common chimpanzees, pan-troglodytes, and bonobos, paniscus, belong to the same genus. They have the closest phylogenetic relationship than humans, Homo sapiens. This is the end of the video. Thank you for watching. Please give us a like and subscribe to our channel. Click on the tab to watch the next part of the video series.